everyone, welcome back. I'm sorry it has been such a long time since the last video. Life happened. Sorry, I'm just moving my notes. Life happened um not in the most graceful way. So things have been going on, but I'm feeling good. We're feeling back to talking about books. So what we're going to be doing for this video, in the next one, I'm going to be grouping 2 months together per video of what I did for wrap up. So as by the title, this is my June/July wrap ups. Also excuse the background wherever it is here. It's just, it is what it is. It's being life. But yeah, so we're going to start with the books I read in June. We read, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 books. But yeah. So our first up, I read I can you tell I'm a little rusty? I read What Feasts at Night by the wonderful T. Kingfisher. So I read What Moves the Dead probably back in May or April, I would imagine. Can't think off the top of my head. And so that is just kind of like a continuation. It's not taking place in the same exact place that What Moves the Dead did, but we have our same characters. And it is a gothic horror yet again. This one was just weird too, honestly. Again, T. Kingfisher writes really, really great gothic horror stories. Let me pull up if I can remember the synopsis, because obviously it's been a few months, so we're doing a little rough. Oh, that's right. So this is like, it takes place in like a little hunting lodge, and something is eating, I guess it would be considered, some people's energies. So thus what's feasting at night. So again, our main character has to, just kind of go on and deal with the next horrifying thing. Really bad about this. But yeah, it's because they're such short books, I don't want to like plot spoil. All right, and then moving on from that, we have the second book in the series of Emily Weidel's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. I really, really enjoy what she does with fairies. So this is, again, we're doing the same thing where we're following, Emily Weidel. Now she's going to the Otherlands. And let me tell you, the mischief does not stop. We're still waiting on an engagement. Like, it just continues, and it keeps that same fluidity and the same thing that was really charming about the first book, I think, which was just how she explores the Fae and is like a reminder, like, hey, they're not all great. Because something I'll talk about a lot, some things that kind of get when you read about Fae and fantasy, I'm like, I don't always want them to just be beautiful, gorgeous, and they're just perfect, I don't always want that. So if you don't want that, this is a really good one that she kind of does that, but you also don't want the romantasy. Like, you want the fantasy to be the focal point and not the verse where the romance is the focal point, if that makes sense. But yeah, Emily Weidel's Map of the Otherlands. There is supposed to be a third one coming out. I believe it's next year. I don't know if that's the last book. It might just be a trilogy unless updated news has happened about that, and I haven't heard anything, so don't quote me on that one, folks. And then this specific author, I read like 3 different books by her. So the first one I read was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This is a gothic mystery. There's a little tiny bit of like romance. So this one, I'd say definitely, if you liked Mexican Gothic, this one is gonna be a hit for you. There is, again, it has to do, not necessarily that fae or fairies are really in it. they do play a part in the story, not a focal point, which again is interesting. I really like it. And you're following, excuse me. So you're following our main boy. And he's like, why is my wife is I love her. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. But she's something sketchy's happening. And find out she gets taken back to the mansion where she grew up because her aunt is dying. And homeboy wants to find out what's going on. And she got me. I had no idea. Like it did not click. I think within the last chapter or two, I was like, oh, and then I was right. But like the beginning, the whole like first 60 to 70% through, I had no idea. Also, you can see a little Luna behind me. Maybe nope, she left. So that was the first book by her I read. The other two is I finished the Gilded Wolves trilogy. I did not talk about when I read the Gilded Wolves just because it was part of the Macmillan can't talk. Boycott, that's the word. It's been a long couple weeks. So it is just the continuation of that story. We get through the first heist and then holy shit, things go wrong at the end of book 1. And so we're seeing the aftermath in book 2. And there's also a ton of character growth. I do actually have a very specific favorite quote from the book. I will not tell you who says it. I don't want to spoil that, but I'm going to spoil the quote itself. My death is not in service to his character, and I will not be a sacrifice simply for him to find peace of mind. He is not my responsibility to save. I have not stopped thinking about that quote. It was just... it was so good. And it goes back, and it travels back into that found family thing, and really like cements it, because there is a bit where they're kind of pulled apart, and then there's another heist after the heist within the heist. So it is really action-packed. I do think the second book was my favorite of the 3. I think, so that was from the Silvered Serpents. The third book is The Bronze Beast. That felt like a weak ending. I wish it had been more. I do still recommend reading the series. I do think it is a great heist shenanigans, I think it's really good. But yeah, so that is the Gilded Wolves trilogy by Roshani Chokshi. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. It's fine. So the next book we then read is The Gilded Crown by Marianne Gordon. This was an arc. I do have a physical copy, just not on my person. So it's a beautiful book. So this is our main character. We start out, she can bring people back from the dead. Like, we're necromancing, romancing. There's a lot going on here. And right off the bat, someone very, very important comes to her for help. And she helps. And because she helps and she's kind-hearted, our main girl, I believe her name is Helliver. Yes, Helliver. I should look up how to pronounce that, but that's what we're going to say for now. And out of the goodness of her heart, she helps him. She's like, well, I have this gift. I should do the thing. And let's just say that it was not a one and done deal for her. No, it was not. And so you're basically just following her story and how that first decision follows her all the way through. And Death is also a character. Thankfully, he's not like, it's not anywhere near how it wasn't like Belladonna. I've talked about that book. I read it this year. I have feelings. That's what we're gonna leave it at for this video. But yeah, I think it was a really interesting take. Actually, do I have my I have my specific little review I wrote. And so I loved the concept. Like, reading that little blurb, I just don't want to, because it will kind of spoil things, I guess. It was great. there was a lot to kind of explain, so it had a little bit of a slow start, but I'm glad it did because there was a lot. Um, you've got magic, you've got political intrigue. You know, our main girl, she is becoming more confident in herself because she starts off like nothing. Um, and so I am excited to see the story progress. It at least has a second book, so I don't know if it's going to be a duology or more than that, but I am excited to see where Helliver ends up, um, and what happens with her and death and her using her power to save people and bring them back. Because we all know death's a bitch. We've learned it in all the fantasy books we read and in life, that stuff. But that's The Gilded Crown by Marianne Gordon. The next one by has become one of my favorite authors ever. Okay, is S.T. Gibson. We read An Education in Malice. So this is a dark academia. It's like loosely. I'm kind. You do see a character from A Dowry in Blood show up for a very brief little stint. But I do feel like it's kind of loosely not, or it is kind of a sequel or a continuation, but it does have very different vibes to it. I was not totally enraptured by it like I was A Dowry of Blood. A Dowry of Blood, like months later, I'm still fucking thinking about this book. It was so good. But the way she writes, it's rich. It's like a delicious chocolate cake that you just want to keep biting into, even when your teeth hurt. And that's kind of what this book felt like. This felt like, oh, I got a little bit of a toothache and like it's not really Jonesy, but I'm gonna keep reading it and I'm gonna keep consuming it. But yeah, dark academia, like academic rivals to lovers. It's vampires. It's a sapphic romance. So it's just all in this like yummy delicious world. And I think everybody should read at least one S.T. Gibson book in their lifetime. Definitely more. I have her newer book Vocation and Odd Spirits on my TBR. I'm just currently drowning in library books because I got the Libby app. So, but that's neither here nor there. It's fantastic. She's just a fantastic writer. I can't gush about her enough. Also, if you heard my stomach growl, I'm so sorry. All right, so that was our June books. Moving to July, a little less books being read, but I finally read This Is How You Lose the Time War. I'm gonna mess up the pronunciation of the name, so excuse me, by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This one I thought was super interesting. It took me a minute. I was having a real hard time getting into it. Red, you've got blue, agents each on a different side, and they start writing each other letters, and things do be happening. So it was a little confusing, kind of, I guess in the beginning I would say, understanding each of their voices. So that was a little bit rough. But I really enjoyed the fact that it really could just be read as a non-binary romance. A lot of people were saying, oh, this is a sapphic sci-fi romance, like sapphic sci-fi book with some romance. And I really read it as non-binary because there's only like maybe one or two like timeline things that happen that you could be like, oh, one of them was definitely female or feminine presenting, and one of, and so it's really not super clear. But I enjoyed the hearing from the different time periods of like, oh, this happened. Was this to you? Because this happened on the field, and I know you'd be liking to do this stuff. It does end up, if I'm remembering correctly, I felt like it ended on a little bit of a a little bit of a cliffhanger. So it kind of like a loose end, like the knot was not fully tied, I guess. And I do believe they are writing a second one, so I definitely want to reread the first one because I feel like I will get a lot more out of it the second time, but I'm just giving it time to like marinate. that makes sense, so that it's like a fresh meal in my mouth and go, oh yes, I've tasted this before. I don't know. I'm sorry. I got home from work. I haven't had food since like 10 a.m. It is now 3 p.m. So we're like lunch on the brain, thus the cake simile. We're doing good. So after This Is How You Lose a Time War, I read Strange Folk by Alli Dyer. Again, this is also another arc. Actually, the next 3 books that I read, including this one, were all arcs. So this one takes place in Appalachian Mountains. Not something I've ever read before. I don't know too, or at least didn't know or know too much about the Appalachian Mountains. So this was a really fun experience to like get to kind of learn about that. So it's our main character. Her name is Lee. She is in the process, like right off you find out she's in the process of getting a divorce or trying to get a divorce, and she takes her kids and said, okay, I need to leave, but we don't have anywhere to go, so we need to go back home to my family home in Appalachia. So, and immediately, almost immediately, there is a heckin' murder. And then things just start to gradually get weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. Her son would see things. Her daughter is like, do I have magic? Like, is this a real thing? All while our main character is trying to firmly deny those roots. And again, that's all something you see right up front. There was some things about it that I thought were a little bit rushed. I do think that I wished, as my own personal preference, that the magic system was explained a little bit more, but I'm thinking it was meant to be the way that it was, which is confusing and kind of clunky because our main character is trying so hard to just be like, nope, I didn't learn this, I don't want this, I don't tell me nothing. So I feel like we're also learning in the way that she's relearning about that part of her family. It's definitely an interesting read for sure. Again, that is Strange Folk by Alli Dyer. And then my favorite book of this month, which we're in July, is This Ravenous Fate by Hayley Dennings. I am going to make an entire video about this book, but right now we're gonna give you the gist, just a little sprinkling, and hopefully that you go pick up the book. But it is 1920s. It is the Harlem Renaissance. We are in Brooklyn, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'm really bad at remembering locations. But we have vampires. It is women of color. It is a sapphic romance. Okay. It's just, it was so close to being a 5 stars. I think there was just one or two parts that I got nitpicky with because it was so damn good. But yeah, just, I can't even, like I said, we're gonna make a video about this and I'm gonna talk in detail for like 10 minutes about that book. But yeah, This Ravenous Fate by Hayley Dennings. It is her first published work. And it's fucking fantastic. So yeah, that's my favorite book of this month, by the way. I didn't say that already, which I did, just to reaffirm for you. All right, so then after that, I read another arc, and it is The Dollmakers by Lynn Buchanan. This book was rough. Okay, this was a rough one for me. So, this one, there's dolls, enchanted dolls, okay? Like, the Dollmakers, we're talking about magic dolls that fight, or some of them can fight to protect people, some of them can be beautiful, just pieces of art, and just exist. And you go on our girl, Shan. She's just annoying. I hate to say it, she's just annoying. The first 60%, most of this book, it was rough, and I really, really had to push myself through, because it sucked, because the concept of the whole book of like, hey, there are, what are they called? The Shod. Thank you, Goodreads. So the Shod are like these weird entirely fucked up monsters. And the dolls that these doll makers create are the only things that can protect people from the shot. Shan goes, I could do this. I make beautiful, perfect, fantastic dolls. She gets told, no, you're not gonna make dolls that fight. You're gonna make pretty, like, here, display this beautiful piece of art. She don't like that. And we'll just say shit goes haywire from there. Um, and so that last 60% is really when things exploded. The language. The other thing that was so hard is like we had to rename the places, but it was like this from the place of the waters and the rivers, or blah 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 blah, and it was every single time they were mentioned. It's like, you have mentioned to me this specific thing, its name, the big long name, multiple times in the book. At this point, I know it, and it's just taking up space, which I which I wish she used to put in more story, rather than being like, yes, we're just gonna keep repeating this and repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. So that was a turn off. And like I said, the main character who we follow like the whole book is just me blah 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 blah. She's very shellfish. I was talking work puns. She's very selfish, and it's just, and I know she's supposed to be a younger character, but it was just very hard to read consistently, and it's talking about this really crazy serious thing. I do see though that how people could really really enjoy it. So if it's at your local library, I would definitely recommend to, give it a shot. It might be for you, it just wasn't for me, and that's okay. Last book in July. We've done it. We're at the end. I finally started actually reading Soul Eater. So I have been collecting the perfect editions. Again, I have them. I just don't have them here on my person. I have been reading the perfect editions, which is the hardcover, which is 1.5 volumes. But I read Soul Eater Perfect Volume number 1. I love Soul Eater. I have watched the anime many times, but I've just never actually read the manga. And so once they were like, hey, we're making these beautiful, gorgeous hardcover volumes, I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. Let's go. So I don't trying to remember exactly where it went through. So you have, of course, the first like little chunk of the book is you're meeting Soul, Maka, Black Star, Tsubaki, Kid, Liz, and Patty. So you're kind of getting their little origins of them being in the thing. You get the fight with, and then it goes into the fight with Blair. And I believe the end of book 1, it goes into when they go to fight Stein for their remedial lesson, or it's just right before that. So if you want to do it, it's kind of nice to just have a little chunk. I believe there are only 2 more editions coming out, and then it'll be finished. I think one of them already came out, and then the other one comes out either December or January. So it's almost done. We're getting there. But yeah, excuse how rusty I am with all of the things. But I hope you'll keep coming back and let me know if you've read any of these. I would honestly love to hear your thoughts, especially if you've read any of the arcs. Like, let me know what you thought, because I don't know, I feel like the Dollmaker, it was just I don't know, I just need other people's thoughts about this book to see, like, am I crazy? Like, was I feeling it? Like, was what I was thinking and getting from it, was it actually that? Was it just, who knows? But yeah, thank you so much for coming and listening to me ramble about my silly little books that I read. The next video is going to be August and September wrap-ups mixed together. Hopefully by then I'll be able to speak better. Until next time. See you then. Drink water. Remember, we're all weird plants and we need to be hydrated.